I don't think the phrase transgender ban was ever the right phrase, okay? Because there was not technically a ban on being transgender and serving in the military. You couldn't enlist if you had gender dysphoria diagnosed, and you couldn't enlist if you had started a sex change, and you couldn't go through a sex change while you were in the military. I think it was something like that. But there was no actual law about if you claim to be transgender, if you claim to be transgender being disqualified from military service. It was the diagnosis of gender dysphoria that disqualified people from military service. Now, it's worth saying along with that, I did a quick bit of research before the show started on disqualifying medical conditions. You can't have anything wrong with you to join the military. You have to be really healthy. Anything medically diagnosed that you join the military with has to get a waiver, and some things are disqualifying, including almost like every mental health disorder. And I've talked about this before on the show about how my whole enlistment process got held up because when I was a kid, my parents took me to a divorce counselor when they got divorced, and 10 years later, we had to track down this therapist who thankfully was still available to make a statement saying that I was like mentally fit to join the military. So they take that stuff very seriously. There is nothing new here. And so let's cover this article from Task and Purpose really quick. And I'm going to get into all the different things that I think about transgender service members and where I stand with this. And I want to hear from you guys too. So let me know in the comments where you stand. I'd like to hear thoughtfully crafted positions, okay? No, yes. I'd like to hear more than that, okay? Give me more than that. Give me what you really think. So Biden drops Trump-era ban on transgender troops. President Joe Biden has made good on his promise to end the Pentagon's ban on certain transgender individuals joining the military. Biden issued an executive order on Monday that reverses the Defense Department's transgender policy. This had prevented people with the diagnosis of gender dysphoria from becoming enlisted service members or officers unless they had been medically stable for 36 months and had not begun medical treatments to transition to a new gender. So it's way oversimplifying it to call it a transgender ban. President Biden believes that gender identity should not be a bar to military service and that America's strength is founded on diversity. That's a statement out of the White House. This question of how to enable all qualified Americans to serve in the military is easily answered by recognizing our core values. America is stronger at home and around the world when it is inclusive. The military is no exception. Allowing all qualified Americans to serve their country in uniform is better for the military and better for the country because an inclusive force is more effective force. Simply put, it's the right thing to do and is our international interest. During his January 19th confirmation hearing, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who we've covered on the show a bunch of times, said he supports Biden's intention to overturn the transgender ban. He said, I truly believe, speaking to a senator, that, as I said in my opening statement, that if you are fit and you're qualified to serve and you can maintain the standards, you should be allowed to serve. In anticipation of Biden's announcement, an advocacy group for gay, lesbian, and transgender service members issued a statement on Monday praising the president's executive order. Reversing this ban is a victory for all Americans, Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Bree Fram, Vice President of Service Members, Partners, Allies, for respect and tolerance for all, said in a statement. President Biden has been given the gift of opportunity to thousands of individuals who will use it to serve the country they love. Okay, let me take a break here for a second and talk to you guys. Where do I even want to begin? Transgender service members in the military. Let me start out by saying I am not against it. Okay, so just so you know, I am not against it at all, period. We're going to cover anecdotally why, and we're going to cover some other examples of, one famous service member who's transgender who kind of debunks almost all of the arguments against letting transgender people serve. But the idea that what a psychiatrist or psychologist, mental health professional would describe as a mental health condition being something that you would have to get a waiver for or that could be disqualifying for military service is not outrageous by any means. It's the standard. It's normal. The question should be, if we're going to say that gender dysphoria is not disqualifying, we should take a look at, is gender dysphoria a mental health condition at all? Or is it just a normal way to be, like being like an emotional type thing, Is it an acceptable, normal way to think and feel, or is it a mental health condition? Because currently it's a condition. You get diagnosed with it. part of the process of changing genders is being diagnosed gender dysphoric, if that's the right way to phrase that. So just like when I said about the beard policy and the haircut policy, it's not about policy. It's bigger than policy. We have to take a look at the fundamental issue, not the symptom. Okay, so are we treating this condition correctly, this way people are correctly? Are we viewing it correctly from a global perspective, the way that we treat people, the way that we acknowledge these ways that people feel about themselves? Now, if you can get disqualified from the military, and I just offline emailing somebody last week or 2 weeks ago about when they were a kid, they had been diagnosed with depression, now they're having a hard time joining the military. Maybe they're better now. Depression, if you're diagnosed with depression, you have a very, very low likelihood of ever getting accepted into the military. You would have to get waivers, you would have to get statements, you would have to prove that you're good now. It is like, it just flags all these issues. Do I believe that we've kept good people out of the military because of, maybe overly strict regulations regarding who can get in? Yes. Am I 100% sure people lie to join the military to get medical care and surgeries and treatments and all this stuff? Yes. Am I 100% sure people do not disclose medical conditions and things because they just want to get in there and get the health benefits and or maybe just serve? Yes, that happens all the time, you guys. That happens daily, okay? And shocker, are you guys ready for this one? Transgender people have been serving in the military for decades. Maybe, I don't know how far this goes back, but probably since the inception of the United States military, there's been transgender people serving. So this would not be anything new. The only thing is that now people can do it publicly. Think back, not that long ago, don't ask, don't tell was a policy. It just brings me to my knees. Honestly, I could cry right now thinking of all the great service members whose lives we destroyed or that we persecuted because they were gay in the military. It really cuts deep to me. On the ship back when it was don't ask, don't tell, they would be, they would have relationships with, other women, other men, and they still had to live under the shadow of this don't ask, don't tell policy, which was horrible. It's something that nobody would ever want to be subdued to, but we did it with, we were so comfortable doing this to people as far as a policy goes to the military for so long, like 200 years. And if you look back on it, it's so ignorant, right? We know now it's so ignorant. And is transgender service members going to be the next thing that we look back at and go, that was so ignorant? Everyone just, if you're anti this policy, just think, are we going to go back and view this as the next thing that we look back on and go, oh yeah, we had that all wrong? The idea that being transgender makes you somehow less able to serve, let me debunk that now in two ways, okay? The first way is I'm going to tell you about somebody that I served with in Afghanistan in 2009 on that detainee ops deployment, somebody who was one of the few people on that deployment who pulled their weight, okay? I'm talking 10% of the people there did 90% of the work, okay? And this was one of those people. Last name Weber. She was a female, okay? She had short hair. She was a short girl. She was a hard charger, okay? Good person. We worked together every day for a long time. Soldier. Now, his name is Steve Weber. Post-op, transition to a man. Now living a life, has a relationship, all-around good person, and I'm so glad to see him happy. I'm so glad. And if me saying him instead of her and identifying them correctly, if that's meaningful to them, then I am happy to do it. I served right alongside that person every day in horrible, shitty conditions, in the hardest job that I ever did in the military. And I want them to live their life as freely and happily as they can because they walked down those hallways with me. So many of the people, here's what I find so upsetting. So many of the people who have big problems with this never stepped foot in a combat zone, never set a foot, okay? Many of the other people never donned a uniform, never took that oath. So where do you even get off with this idea that you know what's best? I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody listening right now, but I'm just saying, you see these people, in the court of public opinion, everyone comes out with all these ideas. You have no right. You don't know. You have a right to your opinion, but you don't have a right to tell somebody else how they can live their life. And you don't have the right to tell somebody in the military what's best for the military. Because you just don't know. So you should, keep your opinions to yourself and vote and don't worry about it. Trust me. Okay. Transgender people can serve. Now let me come back the other way really quick. We were talking about mental health conditions. Okay. If you have anxiety, if you have depression, if you have all these other mental health conditions, schizophrenia, bipolar, manic depressive, the list goes on. Although I might be at the end of the ones that I know. I'm sure that the list goes on. OCD, right? You name it. Multiple personality. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent. All of those issues are disqualifying, because what's the very first thing that happens on day one when you ship off to go for your enlistment? Chaos. Like, military, sends you right into chaos and disorder and screaming and yelling and high stress and all this stuff. It's the very first thing that happens. It's the first thing that happens. So should we make sure that we're not sending people into situations that they can't handle and they become one of the 22? Because if we're going to be so quick to talk about the 22 and veteran suicide and PTSD and all this stuff, are we really also going to sit here and say that we're not potentially sending people to into what should be a predictable detrimental outcome? I'm sure at this point, people smarter than me can look at somebody's history and do an interview and do an assessment and say, based on what we know now about veteran suicide and PTSD and anxiety and depression, how these factors stack up, and compound, and one issue, conflagrates another, that we should have the ability to decline someone's service if it's in their best interests. And the only pushback I have on this policy would be, and I'm not saying I know that this is happening, but would be if we're knowingly letting people in who shouldn't, because they're in a high-risk category for one reason or another, to fall victim to alcoholism, drug abuse, domestic violence, suicidal ideation, because of what we're calling progress in the transgender service member community. That's my only pushback is, are we going to start pushing people in who we shouldn't, honestly shouldn't, because the military is going to possibly cause them serious issues. Military service would cause them serious issues. We have to have that as a serious topic of conversation too. If you guys disagree, let me know in the comments, but that's what I think. And let me go back over to the article really quick, because we're only, we've only just started touching on this topic. So, ending the transgender ban, article says, also enhances national security by allowing qualified transgender people to serve in the military, said Jennifer Dane, executive director of the Modern Military Association of America and Air Force Veterans. Biden's executive order is a reminder that our strongest assets are not bombs or jets, but those who serve. That's true. People, people first. That's our best weapon. Then it's your radio. So, retired Army Staff Sergeant Patricia King, who deployed to Afghanistan 3 times before beginning her transition from male to female in November 2015. There's so many people out there already like that. That's what I'm saying. There's so many people out there already serving who are transgender. It makes no sense to start saying now that we can't do this. It's already happening. It's been happening for decades. It's been in the shadow of, the don't ask, don't tell style policy. The transgender community has been told once again that we can serve the nation we love, we can be heroes, and we can belong everywhere that life is lived. We have been shown once again that unique perspectives combined with shared ideas make us stronger, King said. Today serves as a reminder that the ignorance of bigotry and hatred of the previous administration has no place in America. So let this be our line in the sand. Let us as a people never be pushed backwards again. For once you have felt the light of the sun on your face, and the darkness of the closet will never be acceptable. Those are inspiring words. Monday brought to an end a long struggle for transgender service members that began on July 26, 2017, when former President Donald Trump tweeted transgender individuals would not be allowed to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military, which is interesting because that doesn't align with the policy exactly. Trump said the tremendous medical costs and disruption as his reasons for barring transgender people from joining the military. Trump followed up with an August 25th, 2017 memorandum banning any transgender people from being recruited into the military. Obviously, that specifically goes along with the doctrine that dictates who can and cannot join. But we talked about the policy at the beginning. Now, let me address the other big hot button issue of transgender people in the military, and this is the one that I hear all the time, and it's probably the one I have the biggest problem with. The argument, I don't want my tax dollars being used to fund somebody's sex change. Oh my God, get over yourself. Let me tell you a story about how much a screw costs in the Navy for a second, okay? You put a screw into a helicopter, you're talking about using $100 right there. The idea that there's so many transgender people serving that the cost of a sex change operation is going to somehow be a use of your tax dollars is laughable. It's frankly laughable. So you drop that. You do me a favor, do yourself a favor if you want to sound legit with your argument, is that argument makes no sense, okay? Just so you know, makes no sense. Now, let me tell you something else about that too. There are a myriad of elective surgeries that service members are already eligible for. I got one. I had PRK surgery. People have, I had my eyes corrected with laser surgery. I had my eyes corrected. I had convalescent leave from that. I had my eyes corrected. That surgery cost $1,000, and I took a week off of work. And you know what? I re-enlisted for 4 years. That's called ObliServe, obligated service. So a lot of these elective surgeries come along with an ObliServe. You either have to have a minimum amount of time left on your contract or be willing to re-enlist for a period of time to meet your ObliServe commitment. So if people want to have gender reassignment surgery, I believe would be the term for the process, and start to finish, a lot of that I'm sure can go with minimum downtime during the process where they can still go to work or be light limited duty and serve in some capacity. And then ultimately, go through that entire procedure and then maybe owe 4 years back to the military. Extend your enlistment for 4 years. And guess what happens? Guess what happens, folks, if you ObliServe and don't meet the commitment? You owe the military for your surgery. You owe the money back. It's a win-win. It would honestly be better. It would cost less to get, I think it would cost less to give someone gender reassignment surgery than to recruit and train another sailor, especially if then you're going to lose the skills. So if somebody is mentally and physically fit for duty and the only thing that they're looking to change is their gender, and that this is now a common practice thing and that they've gone through the correct channels and doing it the healthy way, it makes the most sense. It's the best bottom line for the military is retention of sailors who are in critical skill sets, and then getting them to extend their enlistment instead of having to recruit and train somebody else. As far as if you're a ticker, a bell counter or whatever, a bean counter up at like Milpers or something like that, this is probably the best bottom line you can hope for. So that whole argument of I don't want my tax dollars going to pay for somebody's transgender surgery, I am just so sick of that. That argument means nothing to me. I immediately devalue that. That if you come at me with that argument, I have nothing for you, okay? I think it's called The Imitation Game, the movie about Alan Turing, who cracked the Enigma code in World War II, ending the war years early, saving millions of lives. If you ever seen that movie or know that story, he was gay. And after saving the fucking world, he gets basically brought up as a criminal for being gay, chemically castrated, and then killed himself. That's how we treated people in World War II. That's how people treated people in World War II. Think about that. This guy saved the world. And then they persecuted him for being gay. We haven't come that far from that, to be honest. We barely repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I hate that. And we can do way better. And if transgender service members are the next, iteration of Don't Ask, Don't Tell being, backed off and people becoming more aware and we treat people a little bit more fairly who are different than us, if this is just the next iteration of that, then I would love to be at the beginning of that, right? We've got to start that at some point and kind of figure this whole thing out because this is the world now. Like it or not, if you're against it, this is the world now. So we have to do better. Have to do better. And if this is the beginning of that, then that's great, I think. And like I was saying, if somebody has these other risk factors that make them not a good candidate for the military, and they do get this, let's say somebody's transgender, but they also have been treated for 5 years for depression, right? And so they get disqualified from military service. We have to stop ourselves from making that a civil rights issue. That's probably the right thing to do. If somebody's been on medication for depression for 5 years, let's say, and they're transgender and they try to join the military and they get disqualified, and then they say, I got disqualified because I'm transgender, we can't let that happen either, because now we're talking about putting people who are high risk, who should not be in the military, which that's bad, okay? That is probably bad. I'm not for that. So I want everyone to know where I stand on this issue. I'm for, paying for the surgery. I'm for letting people in. I'm not for just saying, regardless of any mental health condition, we should let you in just because you're transgender. I don't think that. We have to make sure that people making these decisions are being responsible about it. Otherwise, we're going to just add to that 22 a day. We already have a crisis on our hands. The military already has a mental health crisis, so we have to be careful that we're not putting flames on the fire too. But being biased against people because of their gender is not what we should be doing, or because they, have gender reassignment surgery or something like that. That's not what we should be doing. There's all kinds of plastic surgery, elective surgery, cosmetic surgery that we don't, discriminate, and that just makes people feel more like, the person that they want to be. And so we need to maintain that standard regardless of if you like it or not. We need to apply that equally to people. So, we're already over an hour on the show, and I do want to get to something else really quick, which is, I need to show you guys two things, okay? I need to show you guys two things. One is the Navy SEAL, Purple Heart, I believe Silver Star recipient, Kristen Beck, who transitioned after the military after retiring as a Navy SEAL, something like 14 deployments, and is now famously, I believe the documentary on her or the book is The Warrior Princess. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think it's worth a read for everybody out there to know who this person is. So she is transgender. She's an advocate for transgenders. She is the top of the top special warfare operator, senior chief, Afghanistan deployments, you name it. Purple Heart, everything. Warrior Princess, yep. Go check this out. If this one person debunks every argument against transgender people serving in the military, okay? This is, and for her to put herself out there as a pillar of hope for people, a pillar of what a transgender service member can be, I think that's a courageous stand to take. And I'm a full supporter completely on every possible level of that. And that person, this one person alone, debunks every argument against transgender people serving, okay? Should we be careful with letting people in the military if they have other issues that could result in negative consequences, negative outcomes of them joining the military? Yes, of course. Please don't just jump on the bandwagon and put people in the military who are really going to end up suffering for the fact that they joined. But this argument that transgender people can't serve is completely bogus and not coming from a good position, a good argument in the first place. So now the last thing that I want to show you guys is, before I get ready for my sign out, is this statement from the Chief of Naval Operations today. Here's a statement from the Chief of Naval Operations on the repeal of the transgender troop rules, and it says this: today's policy change eliminates an unnecessary barrier to service and ensures we are able to carry out our mission with the best qualified and most capable sailors, regardless of gender identity, sexual orientation, gender, race, or creed. Simply put, all sailors and applicants for accession to the Navy must be treated with dignity and respect. This policy change is the right thing to do and is another step in ensuring that we continue to recruit and retain the best and the most qualified people. I'm absolutely confident in the ability of all sailors, active and reserve, uniform and civilian, to implement this policy in a manner that both protects the readiness of the force and also upholds values cherished by our service. We will continue to work closely with the Office of the Secretary of Defense to implement the new guidance provided by the Commander-in-Chief on transgender individuals serving in the military. With that being said, there will be more to come. There will be more news on this, on transgender people in the military, but I hope you guys understand my position now. And let me know what you think about it. Do you think that I'm on the right track, or do you think that I'm way off? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. What's up, guys? Thanks for watching that clip from our live show. We're live right here on YouTube, Sunday through Thursday, 1800 Pacific Standard Time. If you want, come on by, join the chat. I'd love to hear from you. If you like that video and you want to see more, consider checking out this video right here or subscribing to the channel with this button right here. I look forward to talking to you really soon. I'm out for now.